Hi everybody, my name is Jorge Peruzzi, and today I want to talk to you about getting into developer relations and how to excel in your developer relations career. If you're interested in that, then you're in the right place. So we're going to go ahead and talk about 5 tips to kind of help you get in the right role and also excel in your role. The first tip I have is to kind of figure out where within developer relations you want to be. There's 4 main types of roles, and each company will have different names for these types of roles. The first is the developer advocate. This is kind of the main flagship role that people think about within developer relations. It's usually consists of going to conferences, doing workshops, doing tutorials and webinars, and writing blog posts and making videos. That's kind of sometimes it involves a lot of travel, it may or may not, but that's kind of what people think of when they think of developer relations. The second would be the open source engineer. This is a person kind of focused on writing code samples, open source code, and they usually have different names for this type of person. Maybe it's just a developer advocate, but within IBM and within Slack, they both have this type of role within the Devrel team. What's also important is that this role is very technical. So within developer relations, this open source engineer or the person writing these code samples is usually the most technical person or the most technical role within that org. So if you want that, just keep that in mind. The third is going to be the client developer advocate. That's what they called it at IBM. And then the partner engineer, that's what they called it at Slack. So that's the person that will be going to and talking directly with customers and partners and helping them implement whatever software your org is building. So for Slack, it's building on the Slack platform. For IBM, it was using different technologies, AI, Watson, things like that, and helping them integrate those APIs within their software as well. So usually I would like to think that it's usually the second most technical behind the open source engineer or the person writing the code samples. The last role that I want to talk about is the technical writer. So for Slack, it's called the developer content writer. I forgot what it was called at IBM, but basically this is the person writing the technical docs, the API specs, and basically anything you see like on the API site, that documentation is written by this person. Usually a little bit less technical, but nevertheless a really important role. So the first tip I have is to figure out which one of those 4 roles you want to be in and interview for that specific type of role. The second tip I have is to constantly redefine your priorities with your manager. The thing about developer relations is it's kind of hard to have really hard metrics. So sometimes it's hard to know if you succeeded or not. So I think it's really important to really keep redefining the priorities with your manager. So each week in your one-on-one, I highly suggest mentioning what you're working on. Should I keep working on this? Especially if you're at a company where things change fast, like at Slack, things change really fast. So redefining your priorities is really important to make sure you're not wasting time on something that you don't really need to work on. 3, another tip I think, especially within developer relations, I think it's pretty important to go to conferences, especially if you're a developer advocate and a client or partner engineer. Making those in-person interactions is really key. Yeah, so even for like a client or partner engineer, meeting your partners in person and like setting up that in-person relationship and having a more informal conversation goes a long way. And also for the developer advocate, even doing like a workshop in person can kind of give you really great feedback that maybe people will be a little bit scared to write online, like in text, but they'll give you more candid feedback in person. So I think it's really important to kind of go to those conferences, even if you don't like to travel. I think it will help you take the next step in your career. Another thing to think about is that it's not super easy to get promoted within Devrel. So I think be really careful and cognizant of what role you want to pick up, especially if you're going to change roles. I would highly recommend like trying to jump up to the next role if you can, because it is hard to get promoted within Devrel. There's a few different factors why that is. One, specifically what I talked about before, is that there's kind of no hard metrics to really define your success. So it's hard to kind of prove to your manager that you deserve to be at the next level. It's a little bit more subjective than maybe some other roles, such as like site reliability engineers, where they have to keep the service up for a certain amount of time. And if they do that, they've succeeded. If they don't, they failed. Like it's very black and white. Whereas in Devrel, it's not really as black and white. Another thing to think about, which kind of goes to kind of redefining your priorities with your manager, is also like figuring out which project is the most high impact. Similar to defining the priorities, but a lot of times within Devrel, there's so many different projects coming up, and getting on the right project is really important. So like speaking up first when someone says, oh, hey, we have these projects that we want to work on, who wants it? Like being volunteering first, really making your strengths and preferences known, I think is really important too. But being on those key projects it goes a really long way. And even if you do really well on a project with less visibility and you do medium or average on a project with high visibility, that might be the difference of getting promoted or not getting promoted. So hopefully these tips helped. I think developer relations is an amazing career path, especially if you don't want to go full technical into the actual software engineering role and you want to have a little bit more collaboration, a little bit more soft skills, a little bit less coding, and still be technical, but basically have something that's in between a full technical role. I think it's a great career path, definitely very rewarding. So it really is what you make of it. But anyways, let me know in the comments if you found this useful, and let me know if you have any more suggestions for new videos to come. Thanks so much.